In today's video, we have the latest NHL trade rumors. The New Jersey Devils interested in Habs forward Josh Anderson. We also have the latest on the Vancouver Canucks, the Arizona Coyotes, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Plus, we have some signings, more coaching updates as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors here today. Before we jump into the news though, I just want to take a minute and have another quick this moment in hockey history. 30 years ago today, the Eric Lindros trade went down. Of course, as you likely remember, if you're old enough, Eric Lindros, drafted first overall by the Quebec Nordiques, but refused to sign and report, ended up getting traded. So it was 30 years ago today that the trade took place to the Philadelphia Flyers. But there was also a second trade in the works with the New York Rangers, and there was a big dispute over which trade was the one that was happening, and we had to wait an extended period of time to find out what the ruling was going to be and where Lindros was going to go. Of course, we do know he ultimately ended up going to the Philadelphia Flyers, where the Flyers sent quite a package to the Nordiques, including goalie Ron Hextall, defenseman Steve Duchesne, Kerry Huffman, forward Mike Ricci, Peter Forsberg, of course, was a big, long-time NHL player, first-round pick, and $15 million. The Rangers offer, which sounds like probably could have been just as good, to be honest, or at least debatable. I think it could have been as good or better, depending on how they use some of the pieces, but they were offering Sergei Nemchinov, Tony Amonte, Alexei Kovalev, James Patrick, one of their goalies. They had the choice of either Mike Richter or John Van Beesbrook, along with 2 first-round picks and $20 million. So I think the Rangers certainly upped the ante there, especially where you get a little more cash and an extra first-round pick. But either way, we know Lindros went on to have a good run with the Philadelphia Flyers. Ultimately had to retire early due to injuries. Otherwise, probably would be much higher ranked on many of the lists that you would kind of look at for the all-time greats. He was a heck of a hockey player. Was very dominant in his era. It's just a shame he didn't get to play any longer. Now, on to today's news. The NHL confirmed today that they're getting caught up on the Kraft Hockeyville games. Of course, we have a couple winners the past couple of years that are owed an NHL game and did not get it as of yet. So we're going to see 2 exhibition games. They're both going to be the same teams, Montreal Canadiens against the Ottawa Senators. So they will take place October 6th in Gander, Newfoundland, who won, and of course October the 8th in Bucktouche, New Brunswick. So a couple of exhibition games in Atlantic Canada for the Kraft Hockeyville winners coming up this October. A couple of signings here as well. The Washington Capitals will sign a pair of young players, including Brett Leeson. He gets a 2-year deal. The key part is it's a one-way contract. He gets an average annual value of $775. Year 1, $750. Year 2 is $800. So Leeson will be on a one-way deal from this point forward. And they also signed Beck Malenstein to a 2-year deal. Now this one's a little different. The first year is a 2-way deal. The second year is a 1-way deal. So he'll also be on a 1-way contract starting next season. I'm talking about some other young players, some prospects heading back overseas that are leaving North America and likely won't return to their NHL affiliated teams. At least it doesn't look that way, but you never know, I guess. The Los Angeles Kings are losing prospect Vladimir Kachav, who's going back to the KHL. And the Calgary Flames are also losing goalie prospect Adam Werner and defenseman Jonas Kimball, who are both signing 2-year deals to play over in Sweden. So 3 NHL prospects returning back overseas. Of course, some coaching updates here, as I mentioned as well. For NHL defenseman Matt Karkner, and most recently an assistant coach at the American Hockey League's Bridgeport team for the Islanders affiliate, is taking on a head coaching role in the East Coast League for the Orlando Solar Bears. So obviously it's nice to see another NHL player working its way up the ranks. Obviously starting in the East Coast League is something that's fairly common. We'll see if he works his way up the ranks and gets back to the NHL as a coach someday. Obviously has an assistant coaching experience at the AHL, so I would think at some point in the near future, he'll, if things go well, he'll likely get an opportunity. It is being reported that the Edmonton Oilers are supposedly close to signing interim head coach Jay Woodcroft to a 3-year contract to make him the permanent head coach and take away the interim tag. Of course, that's yet to be confirmed, so it's not a done deal. But reports are that things are trending in that direction. Fluto Shinzawa of the Athletics also reporting that the Boston Bruins head coaching vacancy see seems to be leaning towards David Quinn as the front runner. Now, of course, we had mentioned some other names that were likely in the mix there in Boston, including Jay Leach. I think another name that was out there was Nate Lehman, Mark Savard, of course, head coach of the Windsor Spitfires in the OHL, former Bruin himself. And there's some other names out there as well that are all kind of, less experienced coaches. I think Jim Montgomery's in the mix there too, but David Quinn reportedly seems to be the front runner. So we'll see where things go on that front. Of course, he has long connections to the city of Boston, so wouldn't be shocking if he gets an opportunity in that regard. And of course, one other very odd yet interesting scenario that's still unfolding that we don't know the answers to is what the heck is going on in Florida. Why is Andrew Burnett's future not been laid out and confirmed yet? Is he in? Is he out? What is the deal with Andrew Burnett? I don't know what is taking so long for Bill Zito and company in Florida to make a decision. It was reported a few days ago that they are indeed talking to other candidates, which is a little bit surprising, but then Elliot Friedman on the weekend reported that it sounds like he was told that basically Burnett's situation was positive and don't count out the fact that there's a good chance he's coming back. So now we're hearing the latest, again, it seems to change every couple of days here, that they do have an international candidate in mind, and it could be a serious candidate that they're really considering here, and that would be from Finland. And it's Jukka Jalman, who's 59 years old, been coaching over in Finland for, like 30 years. He's been head of the national team for a long, long time as well, has tons of international experience, as well as coaching over locally in Finland. So obviously they have a few top Finns. He would have coached guys like Anton Lundell and Barkov at times when they were on the national team. So certainly would have a few familiar faces for sure. So I'm not sure exactly where this is going, but it certainly seems like the Florida Panthers are taking their good old time. And to me, the longer they take, the less likely that Andrew Burnett's coming back. I do wonder if they'll come back to him and say, you do have a contract as an assistant coach next year, so we do want you to fulfill that contract. I wonder if he would up and quit, to be honest, because, obviously after being made wait that long, and there's been reports that lots of other NHL teams would love an opportunity to speak with him, either about a head coaching position or assistant coaching position, since there's still a number of vacancies out there around the league. So it's quite surprising, but we'll see where this goes. Be interesting to see what the final decision is there. Some reports out of St. Louis and athletic writer Jeremy Rutherford talking about some of their pending UFAs, according to his latest articles and reports, suggesting that longtime veteran Tyler Bozak won't be expected to re-sign, so he's not returning to St. Louis. At least it doesn't look that way. And the same goes for goaltender Ville Husso, who very much is expected to hit the market. It just sounds like there's just way too much interest from the pending UFA goaltender and too much of an opportunity out there for him to cash in, more than St. Louis can offer. So it sounds like there's a pretty good chance both of those players will indeed hit the UFA market and depart via free agency. Hard to say with Bozak what opportunities will lie out there. I don't know if another team will give him like a 1-year league minimum deal to be a fourth line center. That's probably the best he can do at this point in his career based on his recent play. Of course, some other reports today as well, a variety of places, including the fourthperiod.com and Frank Saravalli and Daily Faceoff updated their trade bait situation on their most likely players to get moved this offseason. I know the Arizona Coyotes were mentioned today in reports suggesting that we should expect guys like Shane Gostisbehere and Lawson Crouse to be traded. Of course, that doesn't go to mention Jacob Chychrun, who we already know is one of the top likely players to get traded this offseason, but expect Crouse and Gostisbehere to be on the market as well. Wouldn't be shocking if the Coyotes do swing deals to get some other young talent or picks in return for these guys around draft time. Of course, Shane Gostisbehere played in Philadelphia. He had a good start to his career, had to basically go to Arizona to get himself rehabilitated to get his career back on track. He did have a good year last year, and there certainly would be interest. He doesn't have a lot of term left on his contract now, only making over $4 million, so it's not a huge amount of money. And to be honest, I think there's a number of teams out there that I would think would be interested. Lawson Crouse, on the other hand, I think will gain a lot of interest. He's still relatively young, former first-round pick, can play a power forward type style of game, likely give you 20 to 25 goals. So I would think Crouse, who's going to be needing a new contract here, is likely going to generate a lot of interest as well. Be interesting to see what the Coyotes do. Like I said, I don't think they're overly interested in putting a fantastic product on the ice and winning a lot of games the next couple of years. I think they're more interested in getting as much financial flexibility as possible and getting enough picks to be high in the draft as possible to be building down the road closer to when hopefully their new arena could possibly be built in Tempe. Some other names to watch up there. There are more reports suggesting that the Philadelphia Flyers are expected to part ways with James Van Riemsdyk, whether it be through trade or possible buyout scenarios. We won't know exactly where things go. They'll have up until the buyout window to consider a trade, and if a trade doesn't happen, I guess a buyout is a possibility. He's making $7 million with 1 year left on the deal, though. A buyout wouldn't be too bad, but I do think that it's possible for a guy who can still give you likely 15 to 20 goals and be good around the front of the net, probably on the power play. If they retain some money in that contract, knock it down to 3.5, I can see a team taking the rest of that on. But of course, they may want to try to get more flexibility than that to get more of that $7 million available within their cap. But ultimately, they got to do what they got to do here. I don't see him returning to Philadelphia, but one way or another, he's not expected to return. Another name to watch is the Penguins' Kasperi Kapanen. Of course, he hasn't really worked out the past couple of years since he was reacquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs. They did give up a pretty price to get him, but of course that was under old GM Jim Rutherford when he was there. And at this point, the Penguins have their cap issues trying to retain Malkin and Letang. There's going to be challenging to do. They need to shed some money, and guys like Kapanen, even Zucker to a degree, wouldn't be shocking with limited amount of time on that contract. Zucker's under his final year. Kapanen needs a new contract. It's prime time for a couple of these wingers to maybe move on so they can possibly retain some of their long-time veteran players, and they'll have to find a way to replace them with a cheaper contract. So I do expect Kapanen to likely be on the move. Unfortunately, they're going to have to sell much lower than when they acquired him. They're not going to get anything likely that they gave up in that return. Now, the fourthperiod.com is also reporting on the Vancouver Canucks today. Of course, I reported earlier, talked about the fact that they've signed Russian free agent Andrei Kuzmenko, one of the top European free agents on the market this year. An interesting prospect. It seems like he has some good offensive talent. Not necessarily a 200-foot player, not necessarily somebody who's good on the rush, but certainly somebody who's good in the power play, good at protecting the puck down low, and good offensive instincts if paired with the right guys. So it sounds like the Canucks are going to give him every opportunity to play in a top six role. And the fourthperiod.com is reporting that it's likely that they're going to make JT Miller a solid offer to sign him. And if that contract offer is not accepted, that a trade is very, very likely. And other names to watch that they are going to be actively shopping around the draft include Connor Garland, Jason Dickinson, as well as possibly a few others, including Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And now Ekman-Larsson has control, but they are expected to have a conversation with him here soon to see what his thoughts are on waiving the no-move clause and possibly being on the move yet again. So we'll see. But the Canucks in Alvina Rutherford, who just got one of their top priorities lined up here with Kuzmenko, expected to be extremely busy moving some of these players. I mean, guys like Connor Garland, apparently were trade talks around him involving teams like the LA Kings, even the Toronto Maple Leafs had inquired on him before as well. So we'll see where things go. He's a pretty solid middle six kind of winger with a decent contract. Obviously, Rutherford and Alvin don't necessarily see him fitting in with what they want there. So a number of these guys could be on the move. When it comes to guys like Jason Dickinson, Tanner Pearson, I don't know that they're going to have much of a market to move these guys, but they are going to try at every single effort to make it happen. Same with Ekman-Larsson. I just don't know how that's going to work itself out. I understand their desire to move him, but for one, he has to play ball, and who's going to take that contract on? I really don't know that he did himself a lot of favors last year to really live up to that contract and make it more have more trade value. So we'll see what happens. But the Canucks expected to be extremely busy in the next few weeks. And of course, as I mentioned as well, the fourthperiod.com is also reporting that the New Jersey Devils have heavy interest in Habs forward Josh Anderson. Now, Anderson's been a hot topic. It doesn't really sound like Ken Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens are actively out there shopping Anderson. I think he's one of the few forwards, veteran guys that they're willing to keep to be part of this rebuild. But teams are very interested. They know Montreal doesn't have a lot of pieces there that are not potentially up for grabs. And Anderson's an interesting player on a long-term contract, so there's lots of term. He's had himself a good playoff run last year on their run to the Stanley Cup. Good power forward style of player. So it's certainly a player generating lots of trade buzz. We know the New Jersey Devils have talked about moving the number 2 overall pick. I don't see that being something they'd want to do in exchange for Anderson. But it makes sense that they'd want a bigger power forward winger. Think about the guys that he'd be playing with. He'd be able to open up some space, kind of protect them a little bit, so to speak. Certainly guys like, Hischier and Hughes are not exactly big guys, and that's not their style. So to have a mix of player that put into that would certainly go a long ways, I think, to kind of helping things out and making them feel a little more confident on the ice. I'm not really sure what kind of trade return we'd be looking at. Certainly the Devils have some interesting young players, but I don't know that they'd necessarily want to part with anything too higher end. I'm sure Montreal would probably be asking for players like whether it be Dawson Mercer or an Alexander Holtz or something. I don't see the Devils doing that, but I can see Montreal asking. That would be the players they'd have interest in. But maybe would they look at maybe like a Pavel Zacha, for example, or a combination of other picks or players that they might be able to work in there. They do have some interesting young pieces in New Jersey. Makes sense they'd want to add Anderson, but I don't know exactly what the return would be, and I don't really know how likely I see a deal getting done. We know New Jersey has been open to trading that second overall pick, like I said, but I don't see that happening for a player of Josh Anderson. No offense to him, but it's going to have to be something more elite level for that to be considered, but it could be a different package altogether. So Anderson's name has been getting tons of attention. Be interesting to see how Hughes and Gorton feel about these packages and the offers coming through, and see if they end up trading the veteran winger, even though that wasn't really their intent. But if they get a good enough offer, they're going to have to take it and see if they can make the team better longer term. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed today. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.